Phase 4 is coming, and I think most of the tanks are on their final form. I think they got touched up quite a bit by Agrend at this point. And I want to talk about the ones that I think are going to be the best. First of all, let's talk about the bear. One of the greatest changes that the bear got this tier is that the bear is going to hit a lot more targets with swipe. Famously, the bear was god-awful, probably the worst out there except for the rogue, of course. Probably the worst AoE tank in the game. Holding aggro in trash is pretty much not an option for the bear. And now they are going to increase the damage of swipe again. And they are gonna increase the targets that you hit. Now, the mitigation in AoE is still gonna be a huge problem for the bear. As you guys know, blocking is absolutely freaking broken, and blocking is not a thing that bears can do. But at the core of it, what is really the bear? The bear is essentially a warrior. They are pretty much in the same niche, and that's why they have always been toe-to-toe. There are a couple differences. First of all, I think threat on both of them is gonna be fine. I think the bear is gonna need a lot more gear to be functional than the warrior. Meanwhile, the warrior is going to be able to, thanks to vigilance, be able to hold aggro a little earlier perhaps. The bear, however, because apparently Agrend loves putting this mechanic in every single gosh dang raid that ever existed at this point. The thing about the bear is that they have a lot of armor. It is not rare for a bear to be on the armor cap at whatever level they are at. Now, armor has diminishing returns. The more armor you stack, the less efficient it becomes. But at the same time, what happens is that there is a lot of debuffs in raids that take away your armor. For example, off the top of my head, there is one of those on Weaver and Dreamsight. There is one of those on Hassas. And the other guy, the sleeping guy with fire on it. There is an armor debuff on Eranicus, if I remember correctly. I don't quite remember that one. And there is a lot of armor taking away buffs in Seasonal Discovery for some reason. It's their favorite freaking mechanic. Now, they intend you to do a tank swap and fold the debuff off, but nobody does that because it is just easier to heal harder and just leave the same tank going and get one more DPS so you can kill the boss faster anyway. So being a bear with an insanely high armor value means that, yes, you're gonna lose like, what, 40% of your armor, but when you're at the armor cap, 40% of your armor is not 40% of your mitigation from armor, it is like 20%. So you are essentially a lot tankier than a warrior given an armor reduction or any other tank really. Of course, they got leader of the pack, everybody likes leader of the pack. They got the good Wind Fury that everybody wants because the normal Wind Fury is not nearly as good. In the Alliance it is pretty much crucial. So that means you are gonna get crit because you cannot take the wild strikes without losing your crit immunity from the other rune that you can get, the survival of the fittest. By the wording of how hard Molten Core is gonna be, that's not gonna be a problem for the most part. Also keep in mind that Molten Core is a lot of fire damage. There is not that much physical damage. Like all the things that will kill you are fire damage. But basically, your abilities are gonna hit a lot harder too. So the threat department, the single target threat of the Druid was already very good. As long as the freaking mobs are not immune to bleeding, okay, I'm gonna drop that caveat here. Please do not make all the elementals in Molten Core bleeding immune again, okay? Nomeregan was bad enough. Why would you do that? It's stupid. Why do you want to shut down the entirety of the Druid class for no reason? Don't do that. Even fire resistance in Molten Core, I think that's dumb. I hope they take that away from them so the fire mages can actually do damage. What, you don't want to get Cargos upset that this is not his vanilla? That's why you don't want to take the fire resistance from the mobs away? Like, shut up, just do it. Doesn't matter, bro. Come on. But overall, the Druid remains a okay tank, a very solid single target tank. The problem with the poor Druid is that everything else is kinda broken. So I'm gonna put it on A tier. They are gonna be fine. I don't think nobody's gonna complain that they got a Druid tank in the raid. But it is definitely not gonna be the best out there. Now, the Paladin is also a very interesting one because it got a lot of tankiness, not a lot of threat. There was apparently a bug that made Holy Shield hit a lot harder than it needed to. So now Holy Shield is kinda crap. They put attack power on it, so you're gonna get attack power when you do Holy Shield, so that might help. One thing, and we kinda gotta give a look to this is that a lot of the bosses in Molten Core had very high armor values, and most of the threat of the Paladin is actually holy damage. Holy damage cannot be resisted either, by the way. So when you look at the last bosses of the raid, something like Ragnaros, the Paladin might become like the strongest guy to actually hit them early on, because armor is gonna be a problem. It's gonna take a while until everybody gathers all the items that we gotta stack to do all the armor debuffs on the boss, because you can get like, what, 8 items in the game at level 60 that reduce armor. So when you got your 20 men and you wanna set it up so everybody gets an armor debuff on it, like that's when other tanks are gonna go. But progression wise, I like the Paladin. First of all, the Paladin is also amazing at AoE. They can single-handedly tank the entire trash, and they are amazing at it. They put a heal on Consecrate, so that's gonna be even more AoE threat, of course, with the added utility that they are gonna heal the melees, so that's also something you wanna consider. They got Malleable Protection now, which is basically your bubble is gonna be a 50% damage reduction, but you can hold aggro with it, so they got like a mini shield wall, let's say, with a shorter cooldown. Actually, no, shield wall is 5 minutes now. Haha, get screwed. Overall, the Paladin is nothing that I would call amazing right now. They are not getting nothing crazy. That's just it. I mean, they are good. I would have one for the trash, like just to clear the raid faster, but their threat is not gonna catch up. Their tankiness is okay, but it is not nearly as tanky as all the other classes, because most of the other classes got like some sort of crit immunity at this point for free. The Paladin does have a pretty good damage negation ability for the entire raid, you know, the Divine Sacrifice. So in the fights where there is a lot of global damage, and there could be a couple here. What's the name of that guy that puts curses on people and nobody did curses all the time? Well, that guy, they might be useful for it, but overall I think they are a B tier, they are nothing remarkable on it. On the other hand, the Shaman, and this is like celebration time, come on, they got absolutely gutted. They are deleted off the game. This is the happiest day of my life. Shamans are finally gone. The reign of terror over. We can now play. They took attack power nerfs like to hell. They took a spell power nerf to hell. They put a lot of weird limitations of Way of Earth, and that's on top of the original attack power nerf they got in phase 3, where they took away all the attack power bonus on their freaking stone, rock biter weapon. So they are pretty much useless. They did buff the damage of Molten Blast, and that's pretty much it. So good luck. They are gonna hit 10 targets with it, and it's gonna scale off fire spell power a little better. I hope you're happy. Bye. See you later, bozo. I mean, come on, guys. They only been the best tank without question for 3 phases in a row. Of course, like, it's only fair that they should be broken this phase again. Next is going to be the Warrior. The Warrior, right now, the meta is gonna be to go deep prot. There is no way in the universe where Fury tanking is gonna work out. And that's because Shield Slam has a 15% attack power scaling. Now, of course, the Warrior already got like 3 Shield Slams with the runes. It resets the cooldown. You can spam Shield Slam all the time. That's really nice. But Shield Slam scales with 15% attack power. And remember that Shield Slam now does double threat. So out of that 15% attack power that you scale, you're gonna generate 30% in threat effectively, because it's double, right? The Prot Warrior is also shielded from a lot of the damage nerfs that happen, the percentage values, the flagellation, all that stuff, because flagellation just generates rage now, which is great for us. Basically, it's gonna increase your rage generation as if you had no armor, as if you were taking full damage. There was this bizarre problem in vanilla where, like, the better mitigation you got, the less rage you would get because you took less damage. And now that problem is kinda gone. The Warrior is also gonna get like the new Onyxia buff. They are gonna be able to give people the Onyxia buff, so they are never gonna run out of buffs. You know how the Warrior is like the most world buff reliant class in the game? Well, now if you wipe in progression, you're still gonna be able to do decent damage and work fine as a class. So I think that's a great addition. And of course, the best part of it all is that Thunderclap is now gonna be an AoE, and they get another AoE called Shockwave. So they got 2 really strong AoEs right now that do a bunch of threat. Shockwave is an AoE stun, by the way, so they will be able to tank trash pretty fine, probably. Thunderclap also got a damage increase, latest update they did to the PTR, so Thunderclap is gonna hit even harder too. It's gonna scale off attack power. And also, perhaps the most important change is that Shield Wall is now going to be a 5-minute cooldown, and so will be retaliation. So if you want to do something stupid like pulling 40 mobs, pop retaliation and just hold aggro with the retaliation because you're hitting the mobs every single time they hit you, you can do that. AoE taunt retaliation, insanely broken. You can also pop a shield wall probably twice in the same fight at this point because the cooldown is so freaking short. So they are also going to be the tankiest freaking warrior in the game. The warrior is going to be the tankiest tank ever because 75% damage reduction period every 5 minutes. That's just ridiculous. The best part about the Prot Warrior is that the way it is shaped right now, the Prot Warrior doesn't really need to use any gear to actually produce good threat. The Prot Warrior relies on base values, of course, vigilance, 10% of the threat of somebody that is doing threat, you know, you put it on them, you take their threat, so they do less threat, you take 10% of their threat, it is yours now, but it is multiplied by defensive stance and it is multiplied by vigilance, so you actually get like, 16% of their threat effectively to you. So you actually don't even need to do a lot of threat because you scale off whoever is the stupidest class at the moment in that very patch, you're gonna take their threat. So I think the warrior is gonna be perhaps the most broken class right now. They have no rage issues anymore, their threat is always gonna be fine, and now they are the tankiest in the game because of their cooldowns. Not to mention that in most bosses they cannot be crushed or crit anyway because shield block, so there you go, warrior is just perfect. Now rogue is a class I never ever play, so forgive me if my judgment on it is not very accurate. I would love to see rogues complaining in the comments, but the way I see it, the rogue got a lot of nerfs. They took a bunch of damage nerfs, like Mutilate for example. They got arguably a buff in Shuriken Toss at the same time as a nerf because they put a cooldown on it, but it generates like in theory 4 combo points at the same time, so you can get 4 combo points immediately, so that might even out. But overall, the rogue is a very good single target tank. It is very tanky as a single target tank, and you want it to do anything else and it doesn't work. So the rogue is gonna sadly remain at C tier. It just doesn't work as a main tank. What are you gonna do? Get a normal tank for everything but the bosses and then get a rogue in? All the issues that the rogue had since phase 1, they are kinda still here. And finally the Warlock, okay? The Warlock is a class that didn't get that much changes on. They put more damage on Immolation Aura at the cost of making it so it only procs when you get hit. I think that's a great change because what was happening was that DPS Warlocks were taking Immolation Aura because it was so good. And it was designed for the tanks, so now the tanks are gonna be better at it, so that's a net good for the tanking Warlock. They also made it so Backdraft is not going to consume their Immolate buff, so you can keep your 30% haste up longer. So they will just keep pumping like a madman, so their single target is gonna be great, their AoE is gonna be great, and they remain crit immune, they remain very tanky because they get a flat damage reduction. That's the main advantage that it makes like the Shaman or the Rogue or the Warlock or even the Druid, if you want to take survival of the fittest, even though nobody does, is that they can get like a flat percentage reduction of the damage they take. The Warlock gets a 500% armor buff, so the same things that the Druid has, like that's the Warlock too. They will be very survivable against armor debuffs, which was the problem that in Sunken Temple that made warriors very bad originally when they were in progression because they would take too much damage because they lost all their freaking armor. That's not gonna happen to the Warlock. Not to mention their HP pool is a lot bigger than most tanks, and when you're gonna take fire damage, which is not really something that can be negated, that's also a perk. So overall I would say the Warlock is gonna remain in A tier. They got like net buffs in their damage. Being able to keep your conflagrate up and just being able to keep that haste on you is gonna be huge. So overall I think the Warlock is still gonna kick some serious butt. Now keep in mind we still got one more iteration of the PTR. I don't know how big the changes are gonna be next week before the actual phase 4 comes out on July 11th. I am recording this on July 5th. But this should be a rough idea, okay? They would have to do something pretty big to fix the Shaman. They would have to do something quite substantial to fix the Rogue. I mean, the Paladin is gonna be fine. Maybe it could use a little more help, but it's gonna be fine. Warlock and Druid, pretty good. Nobody's gonna complain that they got a Warlock or a Druid, and I think Warrior is gonna kick the most ass this phase. And I think that's something we can all appreciate, right? Oh, I cannot wait for the comments. I know you guys are gonna be so happy that the Warrior is broken again. Subscribe, join the Discord, and thank you for watching.